but it's really when we cannot control our bowels, and you're out there and the urgency is right then. You got to go, and you don't make it, and you end up not making it to the bathroom in time. And again, that creates a whole load of problems depending on where you are and who you're around.
Fascia is a type of connective tissue that if you were to take everything out of the body and leave just the fascia, you would have a holographic image of a person in front of you. And fascia,
Kind of like a Spider-Man outfit, it sounds like.
kind of like a Spider-Man.
That jurisdiction of the sheriff is really the most powerful guard and protector of the rights of the people than any other institution our founders created here.
A common clinical condition is fecal incontinence, and it's not often talked about. We're going to talk today about what it is, what can make it happen, and some things you can do about it.
Well, I think the first thing to understand with this is it's pretty common. And don't be embarrassed about something that happens of that nature. That's pretty common. I think the best thing you can do is, if you have that problem, is go searching for answers and seek clinicians' help to solve the problem, because it can be embarrassing and inconvenient, humiliating, the whole thing that goes down that pathway. So, we don't need to push, shame into this at all. We need to talk about it straight on. And, I thought that was very appropriate kind of a lead in there. But it's really when we cannot control our bowels, and you're out there and the urgency is right then. You got to go, and you don't make it, and you end up not making it to the bathroom in time. And again, that creates a whole load of problems depending on where you are and who you're around and all of that.
So some of the things that can contribute to fecal incontinence, number one, is what holds the stool inside the body is this thing called the anal or rectal sphincter. And if that gets weak or gets traumatized or injured for any reason, there can be some leakage or some seepage of stool. A chronic infection. Let's say you travel to Europe and you come home and you've got this thing called fecal incontinence. You may have picked up a traveler's diarrhea, which is an infection that needs to be diagnosed and treated. You might have pancreatic insufficiency. So people who don't make enough pancreatic enzymes, they will have high elastase in a stool test. And these are people that need pretty significant amounts of pancreatic enzyme support. They can have fecal incontinence. There are other things that can injure the nervous system of the bowel. Chronic constipation through time can do that. Any other bowel surgeries can injure the nervous system of the bowel. The bowel has its own nervous system. It's called the enteric nervous system. So that can be a cause of it. It could even be the fact that somebody's taking too much of certain supplements. We have found that things like vitamin C, high-dose vitamin C, can have a laxation component to it, or a component of fecal incontinence. And magnesium is another one that is at a high likelihood of causing that problem. Magnesium, not only does it help bowel motility, it is also a muscle relaxer. So if the muscles of the pelvic floor are weak to begin with, and then we're taking magnesium, we might have two problems. We might need to quit the magnesium, and we might need to do some pelvic floor therapy. So there are multiple things that we can do to help remedy this thing called fecal incontinence.
Yeah, I think too, maybe other things that I just thought of that would be related to that is some of these polyols, like the xylitol, erythritol.
Absolutely.
Those things are common sweeteners, there are a lot of people out here that are highly sensitive to those things, and it can create this. I mean,
Mucousy stool.
you got to go now. I think coffee is one that people don't think about too much. You have too much coffee too fast, and you've got to go right now. You mentioned like the injuries back there. One of the most common ones is like hemorrhoids. It can really inflame that area back there.
Or if they've been removed.
That's right. And so it becomes this problem, and as the stool is moving sort of north to south,
Top to bottom,
it's supposed to like be a process of separating what we keep with what is waste. And it's a whole intricate process in the body, including the enteric nervous system, including our digestive enzymes. So it's a whole lot of things that can contribute to the cause. But the worst thing to do in a situation like that is look for one thing that causes everything. And if you look for one thing that causes everything, it's going to set ourselves up for failure, because you mentioned a whole litany of things that could be a contributor to this process.
I've had multiple patients that end up with fecal incontinence, and they have what's called collagenous colitis.
There you go.
And the collagenous colitis can be caused by many, many things, one of which is alcohol.
Yeah.
So an overconsumption of alcohol can kind of irritate the lining of the colon and create kind of a mucousy type of discharge from the rectum.
Well, and you also got the prolapsing, that can occur there. Believe it or not, as muscles get weak over time, ladies have had multiple babies and things like that. We've seen that before too, where you got this prolapsing effect where that little sphincter doesn't hold anymore. And you got to think about exercises you talked about to remedy that as well.
Another thing that can help to remedy it is hormone balance.
Yep.
Sometimes if hormones get really, really low, the sphincters lose their tone. So low hormones may contribute to lack of sphincter control.
Yeah, and we deal with this a lot. You don't necessarily talk about it all the time, but whether it be urinary incontinence or fecal incontinence, it's not that atypical, is it? It's pretty common.
It's pretty common. In fact, I have sent a lot of patients for physical therapy. There is pelvic floor physical therapy where a trained professional will work the muscles of the perineum around all of the vital organs to improve, their tone. There can be trigger points in those areas that are causing the problem. There might need to be muscles that need to be strengthened, and that particular therapist can guide somebody in the exercises that they need to do. And perhaps females and males may need to do Kegels. For females, there's even something called Kegel weights.
Wow. So there's a whole bunch, more than you probably ever want to know about fecal incontinence. But bottom line is, it's very common. So if that's something that you're dealing with, don't do nothing about it. Don't be totally embarrassed with it. Get some help and let's get it fixed. You want to reach out to us, we can give you some information like this. Like we've dealt with this a lot. You can. Sherwood.tv. There's a whole bunch of information out there for you. You can give us a call at the clinic as well. And we want to see you healthy and whole and not let these things that can create embarrassment be a common thing in your life.
What is fascia? Why is it important? And how do we take care of it?
Well, certainly we need to find out what is fascia in the first place. So to find out, stay with us.
And when you navigate through these economies with people, here's what happens. We want to hold their hand through it, let them know when it's time to buy, sell, reallocate, get out of Dodge. Because a lot of times when you're struck with fear does two things. Number one, it can paralyze, and people just put their head in the sand and say, I'm just going to forget about it and hopefully it gets better. Or it causes you to make a wrong decision. And this is why we are here, is to help people navigate through the political quagmire nonsense that's going on, the economic malaise, and the absolute collapse that we're seeing. And when our freedoms are eroding, our political freedoms, our economic freedoms, our personal freedoms, our religious freedoms, our health freedoms, they're all tied together. But you know what doesn't need to erode with that? Our finances.
KirkElliottPhD.com/Sherwood.
There's a lot of talk these days about human enhancement.
Terms like biohacking, bioharmonizing, biosynergizing, stacking, resilience, and anti-fragility.
In our clinic, the Functional Medical Institute, we've been helping people of all shapes, sizes, and backgrounds improve their quality of their physiology and maximize their lives.
So, you can follow the latest fads and gimmicks and maybe find some things that work for you.
Or you can add Kingdom Fuel to your daily regimen right now.
It's the simple start to a transformed life.
Our unique meal shakes are balanced, low glycemic, rich in fiber with 20 grams of clean protein, essential vitamins and minerals, healthy fats, and organic fruits and vegetables. Kingdom Fuel is vegan with a complete amino acid profile.
No gimmicks, just proven results.
Start today at sherwood.tv/fuel.
Hey there, Kevin Sorbo here. Now, deep down, we know this. We're more than just a brain and a body. We're a spirit, we're a soul, and we're also a physical temple. If you hit the wall when you're trying to improve one aspect of your being, it's probably because, well, other aspects are sabotaging our success. So that's why diets don't work. And frankly, why so much conventional wisdom from our so-called medical establishments falls flat. Doctors Michele and Mark Sherwood have a very different approach. I should know because I happen to be one of their patients. They address the whole person to get to know you, your challenges, and more importantly, what your goals are. Then they offer a complete plan that addresses your unique biology and your heart. They'll help you discover what you need to experience transformation. So find out more at sherwood.tv/sorbo. That's sherwood.tv/sorbo, or see the link before. Now, I'm heading for a workout. You should be going for a workout too. All right, guys. God bless.
It's a matter of fascia tissue. Probably never heard that in the context of medical or physical care. But did you know the fascia tissue is really, really important for overall body compositional, the way it's arranged and the way it's held together? With that said, what is the fascia tissue?
Fascia is a type of connective tissue that if you were to take everything out of the body and leave just the fascia, you would have a holographic image of a person in front of you. And fascia,
Kind of like a Spider-Man outfit, it sounds like.
kind of like a Spider-Man. Fascia has multiple layers from superficial to deep, even organ or parietal fascia that encompasses organs. And it's much like a fishnet, if you will. If you get a snag in an area of fascia, you think about that pull in the fishnet, it's going to affect the whole fishnet. So that area of fascia can become constricted, and it can be deficient in the production of something called hyaluronin. And when it becomes deficient in that particular substance, the fascia dries up, dries out, and becomes like a trigger point. And that trigger point can be a nidus for chronic pain.
When you talk about hyaluronin, you hear people all the time talk about hyaluronic acid. That will help repair that. And fascia is made of collagen. A lot of people don't think about fascia as being important because it's not talked about. But as a former massage therapist, you would really heavily focus on the fascia, wouldn't you?
Well, that's where I would get the biggest difference. And you can change the snag in the fishnet by applying pressure over time. It's called hysteresis. Things will change in their nature if you apply pressure and heat through time. So you can essentially give the body a good ironing. It's like exercising an area that doesn't get enough physical exercise, if you will. Fascia can become very dysfunctional if we don't move because it's blood, oxygen, and nutrients that are moving through the tissues that irrigate the tissues and bring nutrition to them. So if we sit too much, fascia can develop this thing called myofascial pain syndromes because there's just not enough nourishment and there's a lack of hyaluronin that's being produced, and the area, the body becomes dysfunctional.
Well, it's interesting because I think of fascia maybe two different analogies. One is like pantyhose, right? And the other is like maybe aluminum foil. Both wrap up something, but if there is a run in the hose, that's a problem. And if there's a wrinkle in um, the wrapping, the aluminum foil, that's a problem too. And you're talking about the ability to kind of fix those runs and fix those wrinkles, even with your hands, right?
Well, whether it's chiropractic, deep tissue massage, there's other things like cupping that are out there now, acupuncture, dry needling. Those techniques all affect the fascia and the fascial layers. And the principle is bringing blood oxygen and nutrients in and flushing out an area that's been stagnant. Now, how else can we treat fascia? Of course, nutrition is going to be highly important, and getting enough simply of the omega-3 fatty acids, because omega-3s bring inflammation down.
Good point. And I think people need to understand, since fascia is made from collagen, I believe there's 5 types of collagen.
Yes.
Type 1 is the most abundant, but then I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, type 3 is the structure that builds the fascia. But the bottom line is we can actually bring in collagen, can't we, with supplements. I like whole body collagen. Use it every day.
Put it in your water, dissolves in your water. It's tasteless, colorless, and can go down the gullet while you're working during the day, while you're riding your bike. You can have it in your water holder, in your backpack, fanny pack, satchel. You can take
People
it
are
with
saying,
you.
well, doesn't that get gross? No, the freaky thing is you can put a scoop of our whole body collagen into water that's clear, give it a little bit of a twirl, and it pretty much goes clear again. It's got a little tint of maybe a dingy brown, maybe a little bit.
Maybe.
But it's slight, but it tastes good, and you don't taste any difference. Some people also put it in their coffee as a creamer. Pretty cool.
So nutrients, collagen, omega-3s, other things that can help fascia are just applying heat.
Yeah.
Maybe through something that's put it like a beanbag that's put in a microwave, and not necessarily electrical heat to tissue, but something that's heated and then placed on the tissue can improve blood flow and oxygen to the tissues. There's also yoga. Yoga is, when done right, yoga is a very dynamic athletic activity that essentially lines up the joints and can help stretch or line up fascia as well.
Well, lining up the joints, lining up fascia, lining up anything is going to help better blood flow, isn't it? I mean, I think that's the moral of the story here. We're trying to bring about oxygenation back to areas again because there's healing in the blood.
Yeah. You talk about that yoga position, down dog. When you get in the down dog, you know which joints are tight and need some stretching. And as you hang out in one of those positions for a while, that's heat and time, blood, oxygen, and nutrients to the tissue, which improve the health of the fascia. Also using maybe a foam roller. There's all kinds of foam rollers on the market now.
Well, there is, and it's mixed, and sometimes, mixed data it's just what it is. It's mixed. It doesn't mean it doesn't work. It doesn't mean it does work, but you think something does work and it makes you feel better. That's good. I think that when you look at this whole process of the fascia tissue, it's neglected a lot, and a lot of people find themselves in chronic pain situations. I think of plantar fasciitis. The fascia that's on the bottom of your foot and how that gets misaligned and all that, and all these things that can happen. But if we just give a little bit of attention, a little bit of fascial love, and even some facial love too, we'll probably see a little bit more healing there. So, I think take your collagen, do some things we talked about today, make sure you stretch, and make sure you get with someone that knows what they're doing, obviously, to give your fascia a little bit of treatment. And you might find yourself being freed up from some of these pain maladies that bother you. So give us a call at our clinic or reach out to us at sherwood.tv. What does our Constitution really mean? Find out next with our constitutional attorney expert, Chris Ann Hall.
Let's get real. Most emergency food is just as bad for you as any other choice in the standard American diet. And that's just sad.
We don't just need food. We need highly nutritional food.
We don't just want to survive food shortages, we are meant to thrive in adversity.
Complete your daily nutrition and have shelf-stable Kingdom Fuel as a cornerstone of your food supply.
Don't sacrifice your health or your taste buds.
Stock up on Kingdom Fuel now.
And when you navigate through these economies with people, here's what happens. We want to hold their hand through it, let them know when it's time to buy, sell, reallocate, get out of Dodge. Because a lot of times when you're struck with fear does two things. Number one, it can paralyze, and people just put their head in the sand and say, I'm just going to forget about it and hopefully it gets better. Or it causes you to make a wrong decision. And this is why we are here, is to help people navigate through the political quagmire nonsense that's going on, the economic malaise, and the absolute collapse that we're seeing. And when our freedoms are eroding, our political freedoms, our economic freedoms, our personal freedoms, our religious freedoms, our health freedoms, they're all tied together. But you know what doesn't need to erode with that? Our finances.
KirkElliottPhD.com/Sherwood.
We have a brand new documentary out called Non-Compliant to the Sheriff. Now, our first documentary, Non-Compliant, and our second documentary, Non-Compliant 2, are both available at noncompliantmovie.com. The first documentary is all about the duty and the role of the state to be a check and balance on the federal government, state and local government. So if you haven't seen that yet, let me please recommend that you go to noncompliantmovie.com and watch the first documentary, available to you at no cost. It is going to be life-changing, and we have hundreds of thousands of 5-star reviews and people all over the world sending us messages about how this message is so life-changing. And it's a global message because, really, it's about your inherent rights. It's about why government is designed for one purpose. The purpose is to secure your rights, and how our founders put together our governments in order to retain the power by the people to be a check and balance on government through state and local government. And from that, we were inspired to create Non-Compliant to the Sheriff. Now, I have been for nearly a decade, traveling around the country, teaching sheriffs and deputies a 3-hour continuing education course, all about the role and the duty of the sheriff, the history of the sheriff's role and duty to secure our rights, not to violate them. We have a whole section on the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, what our sheriffs and their deputies need to know not to be sued. And then we have a section on the jurisdiction of the sheriff, which is so incredibly important. That jurisdiction of the sheriff is really the most powerful guard and protector of the rights of the people than any other institution our founders created here in these United States of America through our constitutional republic. And it's from that course that I had sheriffs telling me, this is inspirational. What you've taught us in these 3 hours is just simply life-changing. As a matter of fact, I've taught this at big conferences where I taught the sheriffs of 17 states all at one time. And I had sheriffs coming up to me immediately before I even got off the stage saying, I've been on the phone changing policies already based on what we learned from you. And we thought to ourselves, you know what? We need the people to know this information. We need the people to know this, number one, so that they can make sure the candidates they have for sheriff know the proper role and duty of the sheriff. So we can be sure to have constitutionally minded sheriffs. Number two, because if you have a constitutional sheriff, if the body of the people are not in support of that sheriff cannot be who they want to be and who they're required to be. And number 3, it empowers sheriffs who already have that inclination. In a world that is full of propaganda like defund the police and all of our law enforcement is evil, you see it all over the news, you see wicked politicians propagating this stuff. We knew we had to create non-compliant to the sheriff to show people what's really happening at the level of the sheriff that the media will not show you. There are sheriffs all over America who are standing up in defiance of unconstitutional laws and orders and edicts, in defense of the property rights of the people, and they've been doing this for years. But the politicians and the media do not want you to know this. They do not want you to know what sheriffs are doing successfully, regularly, to stand for people's rights, because this is how government's supposed to really, really work. Now, what we do with non-compliant 2 is we take 2 real-life situations, 2 events that actually happened. A pastor who refused to shut down his church over COVID, and a sheriff who arrested him for it. And a pastor who refused to shut down for COVID, and a sheriff who said, I'll go to jail to keep you open. And how this 2 incidents actually impacted and changed their states, and even all of these United States, all boiled down to what a sheriff would or would not do. This film is brand new, available at noncompliantmovie.com only right now. Pretty soon we're going to make it available on DVD, so maybe by the time you see this, it will be available on DVD at noncompliantmovie.com. But we're already getting messages about how this is life-changing. And to be honest, if you share this with your sheriff might be one who has watched this movie and come back to us and asked us to come and train their deputies. Noncompliantmovie.com. It will be life-changing.